I should have known the night would go sideways the minute she walked back into the bar wearing the same perfume she used to accuse me of liking too much. The place was half-packed. Thursday night, neon lights humming, the smell of fried wings drifting through the air. I'd only gone there because my buddy Tyler insisted on a mandatory get-your-life-together drink after he caught me staring too long at my phone screen, rereading texts I should have deleted months ago. But the moment the door swung open and she walked in, everything else disappeared. Her name was Leah, not my ex, not my friend, something messier, something in between, something I never had the right to claim but never managed to walk away from. She scanned the room, eyes flicking over faces like she was searching for a problem she wasn't sure she wanted to find. Her hair was pulled into that loose, low knot she only wore when she'd been crying or bargaining with herself in a mirror. And the second her gaze landed on me, her shoulders dropped. Not in relief, not in fear, something quieter, something like resignation. She moved through the crowd, ignoring the hands reaching to get her attention. She ignored the guy at the pool table who'd been staring since she walked in. She ignored the group of girls at the corner who whispered her name like a warning. She came straight to me. "Ethan," she said, breath unsteady, eyes bright like she was wired on heartbreak instead of adrenaline. "I need your help." I blinked, slow, deliberate. "Last time you said that," I muttered, "I ended up pretending to be your boyfriend at your company barbecue, while your actual boyfriend glared at me like I stole his credit card." She almost laughed. "Almost. This is different," she said, leaning in closer. Too close. The kind of close that makes your pulse jump because your body remembers things your mind tries to forget. Really different. Tyler raised a brow, mouthed good luck, and vanished in the direction of the dartboard because he knew chaos when he saw it. I leaned back slightly, giving myself at least half an inch of breathing room. "Different how?" She hesitated. And when Leah hesitates, you know you're about to get dragged into something you can't walk away from without bruises. Then she leaned in, slow, deliberate, and whispered in my ear, "Make my ex jealous." She said it with the same softness people reserve for confessions they already regret. I pulled back, stared at her, searching for the punchline. "You're joking." She shook her head once, not shaky, not dramatic, dead serious. "I just need one night," she said. "He's here, he brought someone, and I can't—" Her voice cracked just slightly. "I can't let him think he won." I studied her, really studied her. Her lipstick was smudged like she'd wiped tears with the back of her hand. Her breathing was too fast. Her fingers trembled when she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and Leah never trembles. She was the girl who once fired an employee without blinking, but turned into a ghost at the thought of disappointing someone she loved. "Leah," I kept my voice low, "this is a bad idea." "Please," she whispered, and there it was, the word that always ruined me. I sighed, rubbed the back of my neck, and finally said the thing she needed to hear, even though I knew I'd regret it. "Fine, but I'm telling you right now, you might end up falling for me instead." It was meant to be a joke, a stupid, reckless line to break the tension like I always did. But instead of rolling her eyes, instead of scoffing, instead of reminding me of all the reasons that was impossible, she just looked at me, longer than she ever had, deeper than she ever had, like something in her was shifting, slowly, painfully, right in front of me. Before I could make sense of it, she grabbed my hand, not loosely, not lightly. She grabbed it like it anchored her to the ground. "He's behind me," she murmured. "Don't look yet." My pulse kicked like it had been waiting for this mess since the first time she said my name. "Ethan," she whispered. "I can't face him alone." She didn't have to say the rest. I felt it through her grip, through the tremor she tried to hide, through the breath she swallowed like it hurt going down. I stood up, squeezed her hand back, steady, certain, and said quietly, "You're not alone." She exhaled like she'd been drowning for weeks. Then she lifted her head, straightened her spine, and walked with me toward the bar. Her fingers still curled tight around mine as if letting go would break her in half. And maybe it would have, because in that moment she wasn't the confident, put-together, sharp-tongued Leah I knew. She was just a girl trying not to fall apart in front of the one person who'd already seen every crack. But as we moved through the crowd, eyes turning, whispers starting, something twisted inside me, something I didn't want to examine too closely. Because the truth, the one I'd been avoiding for months, she didn't need to worry about falling for me. I'd already been falling for her, hard, and the ground was coming fast. Leah's fingers were still laced with mine when we reached the bar, but it wasn't the grip of someone pretending anymore. It wasn't flimsy or performative. It was tight, borderline desperate, like she was holding on to something she was terrified of losing. I didn't dare look behind her yet. She'd asked me not to. But I could feel the shift in the air around us, the kind of shift that happens when someone watches you with the intention of hurting something that used to belong to them. She stopped at the counter, shoulders drawn back, jaw clenched, pretending to scan the drink list even though she'd ordered the same thing for the last 3 years. A gin and tonic, 2 limes, extra ice, a drink that tasted like expensive perfume, and arguments whispered in car rides home. "Is he looking?" she whispered. "I'm not checking yet," I said. "I need you to breathe first." She exhaled, shallow and shaky. "This was a bad idea," she muttered. "I should go home. I shouldn't have." "No." I turned her gently but firmly so she faced me fully. "Not tonight. He doesn't get to chase you out of your own town." Her eyes flickered up to mine, glossy with something she refused to name. "Why are you being so kind?" I finished. "Maybe because I've watched you pretend you're fine for months, and I'm tired of pretending with you." Her lips parted slightly. She didn't look away. That was the part that killed me. Not the desperation, not the trembling hand, not the ex lurking somewhere behind her. Just the way she didn't look away. Because if Leah didn't want to face something, she'd turn her whole body from it. She'd vanish into her phone or fix her hair or pretend to check messages she didn't even have. But right now, she was rooted, present, exposed. And for the first time since she walked in, I realized she wasn't acting. There was no strategy, no plan. She hadn't dragged me into a scheme she'd crafted. She'd just run out of places to go. "Okay," she breathed. "Look now. Tell me what he's doing." I turned my head just enough to see the man leaning against the far wall near the jukebox. Broad shoulders, clean shave, a shirt that looked like it had a price tag bigger than my rent. Beside him stood a woman who seemed assembled for the purpose of making someone jealous. Tight dress, flawless makeup, a laugh too loud to be real. But he wasn't looking at the woman. He was staring at Leah. Not with longing, not with guilt, with calculation. "You're fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He's watching, hard." Her grip tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means you hit your mark." She let out a breath that sounded half like relief and half like heartbreak splintering quietly down the middle. "You ready?" I asked. "For what?" "For him to see what he gave up." She blinked, confused. "Ethan, what are you?" I stepped closer. Close enough for her perfume to climb into my lungs and settle there like it had every right. Close enough for the space between us to feel like a secret we'd been keeping too long. Close enough for her to forget for a second that we were supposed to be performing. Her breath hitched, not dramatically, not theatrically, just enough to tell me she wasn't expecting it. "You said you wanted him jealous," I said softly. "Then let him see you with someone who actually cares if you go home tonight." Her eyes widened. "Don't say things you don't mean." "Who says I don't mean them?" She didn't answer. Her lip trembled slightly, just enough that she bit it to hide the shake. She always did that, bit down when she felt too much. It was one of the first things I ever noticed about her. The bartender came over, placing 2 drinks in front of us without asking. "On the house," he said with a quick glance behind Leah. "Looks like somebody's trying to win the breakup." Leah flushed. I grabbed the drinks for her, shielding her face from the bartender's prying curiosity. "Drink slow," I said, handing her one. "I'm not shaking because of the drink," she whispered. "I know." She sipped, and I watched her shoulders relax just a fraction, just enough to show me she wasn't falling apart anymore. She was shifting into something else, something steadier, something braver. Then the thing I'd been waiting for happened. Her ex started walking toward us. His footsteps were heavy but controlled, the way men walk when they're not sure if they want to start a fight or pretend they're above it. His date followed behind him, looking bored already, checking her phone like she had somewhere better to be. Leah's spine went rigid. "Don't panic," I said under my breath. "I'm not panicking," she lied. "He's almost here. Ethan." And then, without warning, she slipped her hand from mine and slid her arm around my waist, pulling herself close enough that her cheek brushed my shoulder. "Just don't let me look stupid," she murmured. "You could never look stupid," I said. Her ex reached us seconds later. He gave me a once-over, the kind meant to size up threats, and then looked at Leah with a smile made entirely of ego. "Well," he said, "I didn't expect to see you out so soon." Leah didn't speak. She didn't trust her voice yet, so I stepped in. "Funny," I said. "She told me the same thing about you." His jaw tightened, but he kept the smile plastered on like cheap wallpaper. "And you are someone who knows how to treat her right." The woman beside him snorted quietly into her drink. He shot her a glare. Leah finally looked up, and the moment their eyes met, something brittle passed between them. Something that used to be love, slowly decaying into resentment. He leaned a little closer, voice dropping just enough for only us to hear. "You move fast." "Some people are worth moving fast for," I replied before she could. Her breath stilled, not in fear, in shock. He clearly didn't like that answer because his smile finally cracked. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "hope this thing works out for you." "It already is," I said. He started to turn away, victory slipping through his fingers. And then Leah did something that genuinely surprised me. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder. Not for the show, not for him, for herself. His expression froze. "Have a nice night," Leah said softly. Then he walked away, shoulders stiff, date trailing behind him like she'd been hired hourly. The second he disappeared into the crowd. Leah's entire body collapsed into mine. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough for me to feel the exhale she'd been holding for weeks. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over now." I wrapped an arm around her, steadying her. "You did good," I murmured. "I feel like I'm going to pass out." "Then sit before you fall." I guided her to a booth in the corner, dimly lit, half hidden behind a wall of neon beer signs. She sank into the seat, rubbing her temples. "I shouldn't have asked you to do that," she said. "Probably not." "I used you?" "Probably." She closed her eyes, wincing. "I'm sorry, don't be." I agreed. She opened her eyes again, softer this time. "Why?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched her instead, the way her breathing steadied, the way her face softened now that she wasn't pretending to be untouched, the way she looked smaller in her own skin, like she'd let go of something heavy. "Because you never ask for help," I finally said. "And when someone like you finally does, it means they've run out of ways to save themselves alone." Her throat bobbed. "I didn't want to drag you back into my mess." "You didn't drag me," I said. "I walked in." She stared at me for a long moment, long enough for the noise of the bar to fade behind the hum of everything unsaid between us. "Ethan," she whispered, "what you said earlier, which part? You said I might end up falling for you." I swallowed once, heat tightening across my chest. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked onto mine with the kind of intensity that makes a person stop breathing for a second. "Don't joke about that," she said. "It won't sound like a joke forever." Something shifted then, slow, quiet, irreversible, like a door cracking open in a room neither of us realized we'd locked. Her fingers brushed mine, barely, but enough to spark a line of electricity all the way up my arm. "Ethan," she murmured, voice trembling in a way she couldn't disguise, "I don't know what happens next." "Then let me show you," she inhaled sharply. "Show me what?" "That you don't have to crawl back to someone who broke you just to feel wanted." Her eyes glistened, but not from sadness, something else, something new. Something dangerous, something honest, and then she whispered the last thing I expected, the thing that made my pulse punch hard against my ribs. "Promise you won't let me fall alone." I moved my hand on top of hers, slow and sure. "You won't," I said, "not with me." And for the first time since she walked into that bar, she believed me. The thing about pretending, you never really know when the line between fake and real starts to dissolve. It's like stepping into a room lit by only a single lamp. Shadows blur, shapes curve, and before long you can't tell what's furniture and what's your imagination trying to fill the dark. That's what the first 48 hours with Mia felt like after she asked me to make her ex jealous. Everything was suddenly tinted with this weird, electric awareness neither of us talked about, but both of us felt. It hung between us like static building, humming, waiting for a spark. She texted me the morning after our deal, and the message didn't sound like someone who just wanted a convenient prop to mess with her ex. It sounded like someone trying very, very hard not to care. "Morning, I'm grabbing coffee at Blake's. Want to drop by and make an appearance?" That phrasing, "make an appearance," was intentionally casual, but there was something behind it, something tight. That same tension was in the way she stood when I arrived, arms crossed, hip leaning against the counter, pretending she wasn't scanning the door every 2 seconds. I walked up, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, too familiar, too intimate, and her breath hitched. Not dramatically, not in some fairy tale way, just enough that if you were close enough to smell the vanilla of her shampoo, you'd notice. "You're doing the whole method acting thing, huh?" she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady, just getting into character. Her lips twitched, like she wanted to smile but didn't trust herself with it. The cafe wasn't busy, but it felt like every pair of eyes drifted toward us. Maybe it was because Mia had that kind of presence. She walked into a room and people unconsciously paused. Or maybe it was because I didn't fit the template of the guys she usually dated. Her ex, Dylan, was the polished, gym-cut, white-teeth type. I was the opposite in every way, and that contrast alone made people look. Mia's jaw tightened when she finally spotted him at the far table. He wasn't alone. A girl sat across from him, twirling her hair, laughing too loudly at something he said. And for a second, Mia's facade cracked, not shattered, just a tiny fracture in the glass. I saw it. Dylan saw us, and Mia saw the moment he did. That was the moment the script changed. Her fingers slid into mine, not dramatic, not forceful, just warm, natural, almost too natural. She leaned into my shoulder and pretended to whisper something, but she didn't actually say the words. Instead, she just breathed in and let the closeness fill the space between us. It was supposed to be for show, just a little jab in Dylan's direction, but it didn't feel like a performance anymore. "What did he do to you?" I asked softly, keeping my face angled like I was still whispering. She stiffened. "Can we not do that here?" "Not the details, just how bad," she swallowed. "Bad enough, that was all." She didn't owe me more, and I didn't push. We ordered drinks, and she clung to the act the whole time, touching my arm when she laughed, leaning into me when she talked, brushing her hand against mine like she couldn't help it. But the problem wasn't her acting. The problem was how good it felt. Too good, too easy. She didn't look like someone using me. She looked like someone finally letting her shoulders drop after holding them up for months. Dylan tried not to stare. He failed. His eyes kept flicking toward us, especially when she reached up and fixed the collar of my jacket like she'd been doing it for years. When she murmured, "You're being too stiff, loosen up," which she whispered loud enough for him to hear, and that's when he stood up. He approached in that slow, practiced walk of a man who's used to being sure of his place in someone's life, except he wasn't sure anymore, not even close. "Mia," he said, voice neutral but eyes sharp. "Didn't expect to see you here." She didn't turn toward him. She didn't even acknowledge him at first. She just kept stirring her coffee, making him wait. When she finally looked up, her voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Why wouldn't I be here? It's a public place." His gaze flicked to me. "And you brought him?" I smiled at the way he said it, like I was a stain on the floor. Mia didn't smile. "He's with me," she replied simply. Nothing dramatic, no explanations, no extra bitterness. But the way she said it made Dylan's jaw clench. "You move fast," he muttered. Mia's face stayed unreadable, but her fingers tightened around her cup. I wanted to say something that would help, something that would dismantle his ego brick by brick. But Mia didn't need me to defend her. Not yet. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly and said, "Not everything is about you." That hit him harder than anything I could have said. He left with the girl he was trying too hard to impress, and the moment he walked out, Mia exhaled like she'd been holding her breath underwater. She didn't cry, she didn't tremble, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine when she whispered, "I hate that he still gets to me." "You don't have to pretend you're fine with me," I said quietly. "Not when it's just us." Her throat bobbed. "You think I'm pretending?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. After that, things didn't go back to normal. Our plan became this unspoken thing that stretched into the following days. A text here, a check-in there, a "want to come with me to this thing." She kept giving reasons, but the reasons were getting weaker, and I was getting worse at telling myself I wasn't catching feelings for someone who still had a wound with another man's name carved into it. She invited me to her friend group's game night next, claiming it would sell the story. But the moment we walked into that apartment, I realized she hadn't brought me to prove anything to anyone. She brought me because she didn't want to walk in alone. Her friends gave her that look people give when they know you've been hurting, and they're glad you're finally doing something that looks like moving forward, even if they don't understand it. They welcomed me, teased her lightly, and Mia leaned slightly into my shoulder the whole time, like she needed the anchor. But it was later, after the games, after the jokes, after the noise had died down, that the cracks in her voice appeared again. We were walking back to her car when she said it softly, without looking at me. "He used to make me feel small," without ever raising his voice. That's the thing. People think abuse is loud. Her breath hitched. Sometimes it's just someone making you question reality until you don't trust your own thoughts. I stopped walking. She didn't. "Mia," she shook her head. "You don't have to respond." I don't know why I even said that. But I did respond, gently, carefully, because she wasn't used to being spoken to gently. "You don't have to carry that alone." She laughed once, bitter. "People say that like it's a switch you can turn off. So then don't carry it alone," I corrected. "Let someone help you balance it." She stared at me then, really stared. Not at the guy helping her make her ex jealous, not at the prop or the plan. She looked at me like she was searching for the catch, the motive, the angle, and when she didn't find one, she looked away quickly, like she wasn't ready for that kind of truth. It would have ended there maybe if her phone hadn't buzzed at that exact moment. If she hadn't looked down, if her expression hadn't emptied out so fast it made my stomach tighten. Dylan. He had texted her. Just one sentence. "We need to talk." And she froze, not because she wanted him back, but because trauma has a way of making old shadows feel real again, even when the light has long changed. She didn't say a word. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a plan anymore. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a favor. This was a woman trying to pry her heart free from someone who had wrapped himself around it like barbed wire. And now I was tangled in it too. She finally whispered, "What do I do?" And slowly, deliberately, I reached out and took her phone from her hand. "Mia," I said softly, "not every message deserves an answer." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the weight of years pressing against her ribs. And before she could say anything back, before she could unravel or retreat or pretend she didn't feel anything, I gently lifted her chin. "You asked me to make him jealous," I murmured. "But that's not what you need right now." She blinked. "Then what do I need?" "Someone who doesn't make you look back at the door every 5 seconds to make sure the person you're with isn't about to turn into him." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, thick, real. Her breath trembled. She didn't step closer, but she didn't step back either. And that was enough. But reality doesn't care about perfect moments. It doesn't care about timing or healing or whatever fragile thing two people are carefully building. Reality always knocks, and it always knows where to find the cracks. Because the next morning, everything changed, not slowly, not gradually, all at once. And it started with another message, but this time, not from Dylan. This one was worse. This one was from someone I thought would never get involved, someone who shattered the little equilibrium Mia and I had built. And with one sentence, they turned our fake relationship and whatever real feelings were beginning to creep in, into something far more complicated than either of us had bargained for. The message appeared on Mia's phone while we were still sitting in her car. The rain, a soft drizzle against the windshield, the hum of the heater trying to ward off the October chill. She hesitated before unlocking it, fingers hovering above the screen like she wasn't sure she wanted to see the words. I watched her, quiet, patient, because I already knew the look, the one that creeps in when someone has been blindsided before, when the ground shifts under them and all they can do is brace. Her thumb swiped, the screen lighting up her face, but she didn't read it aloud. Her lips parted slightly, then pressed together, her brow furrowed. A micro-expression that told me exactly what I needed to know. And then she turned the phone toward me. "It's from him," she said, voice low, tight around the edges. The text was simple. "We need to talk, now." No pleading, no apology, just a command, and the weight of months behind it. The kind of weight that makes people act before thinking. Mia exhaled slowly, her hands tightening around the steering wheel. I don't know what to do," she whispered. Her eyes flicked toward me, searching, and I could feel the almost tangible shift in the air, a charge that made my own chest tighten. She wasn't asking for permission. She wasn't asking for advice. She was asking for a lifeline, something to keep her from doing what she might regret. "You don't have to answer him," I said carefully, placing my hand over hers. My fingers were warm against her cool skin. She flinched but didn't pull away. "Not yet. Not if it feels wrong. You can breathe. You can decide what comes next when you're ready." She blinked at me, eyes wide, that mixture of vulnerability and stubbornness that made her, well, Mia, complex, challenging, compelling, dangerous, in a way that made your heart start beating a little faster without warning. He didn't deserve the power he still wielded over her, and I realized something at that exact moment. I didn't just want to play the role of the temporary distraction. I wanted to be the reason she stopped turning back. I wanted to be the person she measured against the shadow he had left, and I hated that part of me for feeling that way. But I couldn't stop it. "Come inside," I suggested. "Coffee? Tea? Something to keep you grounded while you figure this out." She hesitated for half a second too long before nodding. The nod didn't feel like compliance. It felt like trust. And when she unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let the warmth of my small apartment hit her, I realized just how thin the line between pretending and feeling had already become. The following hours were a blur of conversation, not about him, not about anything external, but about Mia, about what made her feel alive, about the little routines she clung to, about the books she read when no one was watching, about the music that reminded her she still existed outside of the trauma. And as she talked, I noticed the subtle ways she began to anchor herself to the present, the way she poured her coffee, the way her fingers drummed against the mug, the way she leaned into me just enough to feel human. But reality, as always, doesn't wait for anyone. The phone buzzed again, a notification from a different line this time, a number she didn't recognize, and a new wave of tension washed over her. "It's," she started, hesitating. "Someone else." "Someone who?" I asked, gently, trying to keep my tone even, because I could feel the storm brewing in her chest. "An old friend, or maybe not old, someone I let go of years ago, but they know about him." I frowned, heart sinking slightly. Every layer we peeled back only seemed to reveal another complication. But instead of panicking, I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then we deal with them together," I said softly. "Whatever it is, you're not facing it alone." Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, that small, almost imperceptible tilt of vulnerability, and then she turned away to type a response. I stayed still, aware that any movement might break the fragile equilibrium she was clinging to. The tension in the air was thick, almost tangible, and every breath we took seemed synchronized with the other, silent, careful, measured. And then the doorbell rang. Neither of us moved at first. Not until the second chime reverberated through the apartment did Mia glance toward me, that wary, calculating expression returning. Her ex, he had shown up. "Stay," I whispered, stepping in front of her without thinking. My chest hitched with a strange mix of fear and determination. "I'll handle this." He wasn't expecting me. His confident, polished exterior faltered for a fraction of a second, the kind of micro-fall you only notice if you're paying attention. He glanced at Mia, then at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of uncertainty. "Hello," I said evenly, keeping my hands visible, calm, controlled. "I don't know what you think you're walking into, but she's not alone anymore." He opened his mouth, probably rehearsed some line about reconciliation or misunderstanding, but I didn't give him the chance. "You don't get to push her," I continued, voice firm. "Not tonight, not ever." Mia, still behind me, stayed silent, not because she was hiding or weak, but because she was watching me claim that space for her, the space he had tried to occupy for so long. The tension stretched on, taut as a wire, until finally he exhaled sharply and backed away. "Fine," he muttered, voice lower, clipped. "I just thought wrong," I interrupted gently, but with unmistakable finality. He left, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving us in a silence so thick it felt almost sacred. Mia's body sagged against mine, relief flooding her features, and I could feel the slow release of months of tension that she hadn't realized she was holding. "You did that," she murmured, voice raw, almost disbelieving. "I did what?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "You stood up for me," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "Even when I didn't ask you to." I shrugged lightly, though my heart was hammering. "Some things you don't have to ask for. You deserve it." Her lips quivered. She took a small step closer, hesitated, then leaned in, just a fraction, just enough that her warmth brushed against mine. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," she admitted, and her eyes glistened with a mixture of fear and hope. "You don't have to do anything," I whispered. "Not tonight, not ever, if you don't want to. Just stay here, breathe, let it be ours for a while." She nodded slowly, that tiny, perfect tilt of trust, and the storm outside seemed to fade into a soft drizzle. It was just her and me, tangled in a fragile, delicate moment that felt almost too real to exist. And that's when I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. She wasn't just using me to make someone else jealous anymore. She was letting me in, fully, and I was letting her in too, in a way that didn't have any script, any plan, any safety net. The rest of that night blurred into a slow rhythm of small gestures, hands brushing over a coffee mug, laughter that wasn't forced, conversation that wasn't guarded. By the time dawn began to seep into the apartment, washing the floorboards in soft gold light, neither of us had mentioned Dylan or the ex-friend or any of the complications that were still waiting outside the door. We didn't need to. The moment itself was enough. But the reality of tomorrow was still waiting, and I knew, deep down, that it would test everything we were trying to build, because trust isn't built in perfect moments. It's forged in the cracks, in the spaces between words, in the way you show up when everything else says you shouldn't. And tomorrow promised to test us harder than any cafe stunt or carefully orchestrated plan ever could.